I think, it's a great feeling that finally, it seems like people are waking up to this alternative design that Cosmos is providing. And it seems like it's winning in some areas. And I think the high fees on some of these other chains are one example, but IBC is probably another example because, although you have all these independent chains, IBC allows you to communicate with each other.
And we are back. Hello and welcome DeFi Times community to yet another episode of This Week in Cosmos. And today, Fabi and I have the pleasure to welcome Onur Akpolat to the show. He is the product lead of the Builders program at Interchain. Hey, Onur, how are you doing? It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Hi, JURI. Hi, Fabian. Great to see you again. I'm great. Back to work after the great conference that you guys organized. So everything's going perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it was such a pleasure having you guys. And before we dive deeper into what Interchain precisely does, it would be super awesome if you could give us like a broader overview of yourself. So how did you enter the crypto industry and what are you working on right now?
So right now I'm building the Builders program at Interchain. And that's basically an initiative to support the ecosystem and teams that are building with Cosmos. We can dive into that in a second. I've been with Interchain for a little over a year now, and I've been in the space for the last 5-6 years. Basically, in 2015, I had my own company, Web 2.0 startup. I was the co-founder and CTO there, and we were building a competitor to Facebook in the sense that we wanted to allow, other applications, other app developers to build their own social graph and to build their own interest graph, because we're seeing this trend that Facebook was kind of owning more and more in the content. We wanted to create a solution that helps those companies to build their own interest graph and social graph and capture some of this value. That went okay, but we got acqui-hired after a year, and then I fell into this vacuum of deciding what to do next, and that's when I discovered crypto. And my journey was pretty much get into mining and reading the papers into the rabbit hole, and one thing led to another, and then I joined a project called Radical in 2018, which was kind of the first project I joined very early as a core contributor. And afterwards, basically in between, there was some Corona things going on, but afterwards ended up at Interchain.
Before we get deeper into the interview, could you give us like a broad overview of what Interchain does, where you're working at right now?
Yeah, Interchain, I think, is kind of a little bit confusing when you first hear about it, because Interchain, there's not this one thing that you can point to. It's a couple companies, it's a couple entities, it's a huge ecosystem. But it all, I think, it started, leaving the papers aside, I think it all started 2017 with the Interchain Foundation, which has been created for the ICO back then. It was a crazy ICO. I think 17 million was raised in under 30 minutes, if I remember correctly. And the ICF is the foundation in Switzerland, and then there was an operating company, which was Tendermint at the time. So most crypto networks are organized that way because there's some nonprofit organization for the governance of the network and the treasury, and then there's an operative company to cover costs and pay salaries and whatnot. So Interchain was organized similar. But, at some point, there were different people working on different things and different interests. So it branched off into a couple more entities. So today, there's Interchain, there's Tendermint. These are Tendermint Inc. and Interchain today are two separate organizations. Tendermint is a private organization working in this space. And Interchain Foundation is basically still the original foundation back then from the race that has the mandate of governing the network and basically keep educating the ecosystem, support the ecosystem, help people and developers build great things in the ecosystem. But then there's also other companies such as Informal, where they're working heavily on audits and research and helping on that front, plus many, many more entities that joined the ecosystem later. But in its core, there's Interchain Foundation, and then there's the Interchain operative company, where also I work in, And then there's a couple more private entities such as Tendermint Inc. that support the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think this was a very important overview because many cosmonauts are a little bit confused about this because there's so many entities and companies with different tasks. So I think this is very important to get the understanding here. But now let's talk about Interchain. I think this is always a very interesting discussion. So we asked this question many times on the show already, but it's always interesting to get some different point of views in this discussion. So many people in Cosmos criticize projects like SushiSwap or Aave as they expand to several blockchains. So of course, it's super secure if you launch on different blockchains, but you also split your liquidity across many different blockchains. And Osmosis, for example, is the opposite. They are designed that they are their own blockchain, and they are more pivoting in towards the interchain future. So what is your point of view in this discussion? So how do you think this all will play out, and do you see somewhat a trade-off regarding a multi-chain future?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think it's interesting if we look a little bit of the history of why all these chains exist in the first place. So you mentioned SushiSwap and a couple other EVM implementations. So if you look at Ethereum today, it's mostly a very congested network, which means that fees are very high. I think a single Uniswap swap today costs around $200 worth of ETH. There's more complex smart contract transactions that are more expensive. Transfers, I think, are between $20 and $50. So if you look at that, it's clear that this network isn't usable for, for everyday purposes or for the average user. So because of that, we've seen the rise of multiple EVMs, whether that's a commit chain or layer 2 or how the technology works exactly. But if you take some of these, let's say, different EVM implementations, these networks, as you mentioned, they all need an AMM for swaps. They all need liquidity. They all need all these protocols. And as you pointed out, this leads to kind of a multi-chain world, at least if we take this EVM example, where you now have kind of fractions of liquidity at all these different chains. But this liquidity is mostly siloed. There's not yet an elegant solution how you can tap into all this liquidity at the same time. And even if you would to, it's basically fragmented over a set of different chains, in this case, EVM chains. Now, if you take the Cosmos SDK, the Cosmos SDK philosophy from the beginning was to have application-specific blockchains. And we pointed out Osmosis. So Osmosis is one of these application-specific blockchains. In this case, it provides AMM infrastructure, right? So it's basically AMM primitives or AMM infrastructure as a chain. And the way kind of you communicate with this chain is IBC. So in that sense, the infrastructure is completely different. Osmosis would be a kind of proper interchain architecture, whereas if you are on multiple chains and multiple EVMs, it's a bit more fragmented. It's a different design. Without judging, I think the Osmosis design is pretty interesting. I mean that's why we came up with the Cosmos SDK design and the Internet of Blockchains in the first place.
Yeah, I do agree with you here. And I mean, it's like two different strategies. It's like SushiSwap, what you talked about, and also Aave, they are kind of like a multi-chain. They have a multi-chain strategy, and they want to launch on as many different chains as possible. But on the other hand, Osmosis has one chain, its own chain, and they don't plan to deploy their application on other chains. But maybe they will in the future and say, okay, we're here, but maybe we can also expand elsewhere. And I mean, that's what we have to see right now. And I think it's very good to explore different strategies and see what's best. But obviously we're in the Cosmos ecosystem, so we are kind of like betting on this interchain interchain strategy of Osmosis. And so my next question is, in the sense of a multi-chain future. Like we see a lot of incentive programs from other blockchains, such as Avalanche or Near or whatever. They have like huge funds, which are like hundreds of millions of dollars. Like we've seen this Avalanche rush that had like, I think $180 million in incentive program to incentivize other projects to launch on their blockchain. But right now we don't have this with Cosmos. So what do you think is the main incentive for projects to launch on Cosmos right now, as we don't have this huge fund to incentivize projects to launch there?
Yeah, I think this is kind of partially because of the design. Because if you look at Avalanche, for example, it's a single ecosystem or environment where they want to incentivize you to build on Avalanche, and that's great. So there are benefits to that, and there's cons to that. However, in the Cosmos ecosystem, since we support application specific chains, we don't necessarily you don't necessarily have to build on the Cosmos hub, which we can talk about in a second. You can build your own chain, and all these chains, as they grow, they come up with their own funds to build on top of that. So our solution to this problem is manifold. We do have a grants program which is running, which is for very specific strategic types of work that we want to support and that we want to see happen in the Cosmos ecosystem. But specifically, what I'm working on right now is also something that we call the Builders Program. And the Builders Program is targeting exactly that. So we basically, incentivize and support teams to build with the Cosmos SDK, build their own chains, connect to IBC, be part of this ecosystem. And along the way, money is one thing, but I've also seen in the last couple of months that, every project is oversubscribed, basically. There's so much money in the ecosystem right now that this is not the number one concern. The number one concern that we've seen is people need kind of pointing into the right direction in terms of legal and cooperation, go-to-market, having access to custody, getting validators, doing their go-to-market, marketing in general, community building. When it comes to the tech, prioritizing the right technical issues. For example, right now we're shipping ABC++. So, we've seen that money is one thing, but we're actually building a team that can do valuable work and prioritize the right things for the teams. Because we think that right now, the teams, most of the teams are going to have no problems whatsoever to raise funds in order to pay salaries and finance their businesses. However, we want to create a kind of a partnership, a closer partnership and this type of program to support the teams along the way more strategically.
Yes, I think this is very, very important. So you basically help projects to come to Cosmos and solve everyday problems, if you want to say it like this.
Exactly, because like you said, it's a difficult ecosystem to navigate at first because there's no central entity. There's not this like one central place where you can go to and everything will be redirected magically. It's more so that you have to first, figure out who's responsible for what, navigate the ecosystem, and only then are you able to build on it. Although, from a tech stack perspective, I think it's probably, best in class technology if you want to build chains.
Yeah, totally agree on that. And you mentioned a couple of times the Cosmos SDK already. And in the last episode, we got a question from the community. So some people are new to Cosmos and they were wondering what the Cosmos SDK essentially is. So could you explain the Cosmos ecosystem real quick in simple words?
Yes. So before going into the Cosmos SDK, maybe we can talk about Tendermint or Tendermint Core. So Tendermint Core is a, PBFT-like consensus that basically solves the Byzantine generalist problem. If you build these networks in the open, in an environment that is not trusted, you have to have a mechanism to find consensus, and that consensus kind of defines the state of truth in these networks. So, you have to have a mechanism that basically allows different parties to communicate and agree on each other. In a closed system, that's easy because you know everyone who operates the system. It's basically you or an entity. But in an open system, it's difficult. That's why proof of work was came into effect with Bitcoin or the Hashcash algorithm, and that's why proof of stake or PBFT-like a Tendermint-like consensus exists, for example, here. So that's at its core. That's the core module, and that's that's kind of the core of the SDK if you want so. But the SDK on top of that gives you more modules, we call them modules, to build blockchains. This can be the staking module, this can be the governance module, this can be the IBC module that enables you to connect with everyone else. And there can be many more modules. You obviously can build your own business logic and implementation for whatever application specific chain you're building. But the Cosmos SDK is a suite or a framework of modules that allow you to build blockchains. And one implementation of that is the Cosmos Hub. So the Cosmos Hub is basically using the Cosmos SDK, runs on the Cosmos SDK. Other projects such as Terra use the Cosmos SDK, and so on and so forth. So I think on our website, we have a list of all the projects that are using Cosmos SDK, but Cosmos SDK basically allows you to build your own layer 1 blockchain. I mean, although I don't want to push too much for this layer 1, layer 2 narrative, but basically allows you to build blockchains and makes it really, really easy for you. To give you another perspective, instead of working on your own blockchain for a couple of months, the Cosmos SDK allows you to build it in a couple of weeks. And now there's more tooling that allows you to spin up a blockchain in a day, although that might not be production ready, but you get the idea.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is also why Cosmos has become so big in the past couple of months, because it was so easy for developers to use this existing framework in order to set up their own blockchain. And in the very beginning, we mentioned the Cosmoverse conference, and at the conference, I just realized how big and prosperous the Cosmos ecosystem has become. So what is your take on that, on a potential network effect coming from Cosmos? I think we especially saw this when Osmosis launched. So yeah, how do you view the last couple of months in the Cosmos ecosystem?
I think, it's a great feeling that finally, it seems like people are waking up to this alternative design that Cosmos is providing. And it seems like it's winning in some areas. And I think the high fees on some of these other chains are one example, but IBC is probably another example, because, although you have all these independent chains, IBC allows you to communicate with each other. And the reason it became more and more prominent recently, I think, is also there's been a ton of exploits of other bridges. And if you look at other bridges, they're not only mostly trusted, they're also like, this is a hard problem to solve. And most solutions you find today focus on EVM to EVM bridge only. So, we have something that we worked on the past 3 years that all we require is a fast finality chain or, sufficient proofs. And we allow chains to communicate with each other and transfer messages with each other. This can be used to, for example, transfer tokens. And, seeing others kind of waking up to that narrative and finding value is a great feeling. And I think that's what happened. And I think Osmosis was probably a wake-up call for many others that just observed it on the side, because people kind of slowly realized the power of this design in terms of scalability, but also in terms of decentralization. And yeah, I mean, that's great. I think the last months have been amazing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I want to get back to what you said earlier. It's like the need for a standardized token bridge is huge. It's like, actually, in my opinion, it's one of the biggest problems in crypto right now, because we saw, as you said, like so many hacks. Like one recent example was this Poly network hack, which was like 3-digit million of dollars, which were stolen, like from 1 second to another, poof, it's gone. And IBC kind of solves this, right? It's like a standardized token bridge. And why would we need to build token bridges from scratch if we have IBC? It's like we only need a fast finality chain, as you said, and that's it. So why should we build another token bridge? And that's what Cosmos, the big problem that Cosmos essentially solves. So what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think there might be a little bit of like confusion there going on, and that's totally normal, by the way. So IBC is a communication standard, it's kind of more abstract protocol that defines communication between potentially multiple Cosmos SDK chains, but it doesn't have to be Cosmos SDK chains. It can also be other, fast finality chains, or it can be single machines. Like IBC is just a standard that allows, let's say 2 entities to communicate with each other as long as there's sufficient proofs. Now, there can still be, if you look at Avalanche, for example, right? Avalanche consensus, the way I understand it, it's not a fast finality consensus. It's, I think, somewhat a probabilistic consensus, although I might be wrong. But for Avalanche, in order for Avalanche to use IBC, it's a little bit more complicated. I think there's a lot of work that would need to get done. There's a great episode with Emin and Zaki, I think, online already for people if they're interested. But for example, there can still be an Avalanche Cosmos bridge that doesn't use IBC. Like I still see value in bridges for designs where IBC, it's not the easiest first step. It's not the MVP to implement. However, in a perfect world, from the Cosmos perspective, yes, we definitely would want everyone to just use IBC because that's the standard we developed to solve this problem and to potentially develop bridges. But I think, especially in the beginning, there might still be room for other bridges beyond IBC because IBC requires a very specific set of features. And if your environment doesn't satisfy these features, then you might not be able to use IBC out of the box. And in that sense, we're probably going to see bridges. But generally, I agree with you. Instead of having 25 different bridge implementations that might break, why not use a standard that we developed over 3 years that we know is solid, that proves itself more and more? And yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And now that we've come to the end of this episode, could you give us like a rough roadmap of what you guys are working on at Interchain right now, like a little roadmap of what you're working on and also what's to come in 2022?
For sure. So personally, very excited to launch the Builders program. That's going to be announced more publicly soon, and happy to onboard many teams onto the program and see more Cosmos SDK chains. A couple things I think. So as Interchain, I would say the biggest thing we are personally working on is interchain security. So the one potential downside of this design that we just discussed how Cosmos SDK chains work is you have to have your own validator set that provides security to the network, right? So you have to bootstrap your own validators, which means you need infrastructure operators that run your node in order to secure your network. And that's a big undertaking. That's a big task. You need to hire people for that. You need to maintain this. So we figured there might be an opportunity to have a shared security story, which means in the future, people or developers or entities will be able to build Cosmos SDK chains without having to have their own validator set. And the way this is going to work is, they will be able to use the validator set of the Cosmos Hub if the Cosmos Hub validators opt into this. And this is called interchain security. Many more details about this to be told. But in a nutshell, there will be provider chains such as the Cosmos Hub, and then there will be consumer chains. So you can decide to opt in as a consumer chain, and then you basically inherit some of the security. And the reason this is important is security is always, not always, but some dimension for security, the way security is measured is in dollars in terms of how much would it cost to attack the network. And especially for new networks, it might not cost much to gain the majority of the network and attack the network. So in that sense, interchain security is probably by far the biggest change and the biggest contribution. Interchain will be shipping in the Cosmos ecosystem. Other than that, much closer, there's the Vega update that's coming. It's already live on testnet. So Vega comes with a couple new modules. There's a fee grant module that allows you to pay fees on behalf of others. There's a new auth Z module that allows you to do governance and others, and many more other small improvements. And in terms of kind of bigger outlook 2022, it's always a big question. But I personally think IBC will get more adopted. We'll see more and more chains adopt that. I hope there's going to be hundreds of new Cosmos SDK chains that will be created. In terms of security, I think we're going to see probably the first roll-up chains Another thing I'm super excited about is kind of more privacy preserving environments. Just recently, Sacred Network connected to IBC. There's also another project called Penumbra that is kind of working on more privacy preserving DeFi, let's say, in a sense, or technology in a broader sense. That's super exciting. And yeah, these are just some of the areas that I'm seeing. Personally, also quite excited about the groups module. So the groups module is, if you're familiar with Gnosis Safe, it's kind of a Gnosis Safe like environment or toolkit for the Cosmos ecosystem, which will probably give the whole DAOs on Cosmos another boost, because one of the biggest thing for DAOs is managing the treasury, and the groups module will make that much more convenient. So I'm hoping to see a lot of DAOs in the future to be built on the hub or on a Cosmos chain. And yeah, these are kind of some of the things that are top of mind.
Yeah, what we definitely see is that it's a very exciting time to be in Cosmos, and I want to highlight two developments here. So first of all, the Interchain security model. I think it's one of the most anticipated developments in the Cosmos ecosystem. So many people are looking forward to it, and it will be like basically, a game changer for the whole industry. And the second thing is regarding the privacy development with Sacred Network, for example. There was also like a very interesting thread, I think, by Josh Lee from Osmosis. He basically pointed out that the narrative from privacy coins somehow changed, so that we don't have like single projects like Monero, for example, but that we like integrating like these types of structures into new blockchains. And I think this is super exciting, especially when we integrate this into DeFi. But one last time, let's talk about the your builders program. So if I'm a builder and I'm interested in joining the program, what is a good way to reach out?
So for now, the best way would be to reach out to myself or Marco. So that's Onur@interchain.io or Marco@interchain.io, who's kind of co-leading the technical side of the program. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have a section on the website where people can reach out directly via the website. Other than that, people can find me on Twitter, Telegram, Discord, basically on all major channels. But email is probably the best channel for now.
Yeah, and you heard it here first, guys. If you're interested, if you're a builder and you want to join the program, please feel free to do so. You can find all the necessary links and Onur's email address in the description below. And with that being said, Onur, it was such a pleasure to having you on. I wish you all the best for the future of the Interchain Foundation, and we are all looking forward to all these major developments. I think exciting times lie ahead of us in the Cosmos ecosystem. And with that being said, I hope I see you soon.
Thanks so much, Juri. Take care. Bye-bye.